One of my favorite fairy tales to read as a kid was Jack and the Beanstalk. And I think a big reason was it was the first fairy tale that I heard that didn't have a prince or a princess as the main character. It was an ordinary boy. Plus it had a really cool idea, giants living in a palace in the clouds. I mean, how cool is that? So naturally, I watched this episode a lot as a kid. But does it still hold up? Well, let's check it out. The story, in case you didn't know, is about a young boy named Jack who has his head in the clouds. His mother and him are pretty low on cash, so his mother makes him sell the cow. He doesn't want to sell the cow, but he knows he has to do it anyway. He then comes across a very weird old man who kind of sounds like one of the crows from Dumbo, who gives him 5 magic beans. Sounds like a fair trade to me. His mother is angry at him for trading the cow for some beans and throws him out the window and yells at him. But later that night, the beans actually grow into a gigantic beanstalk. Driven by the thrill of adventure, Jack climbs up the beanstalk and finds, to his surprise, a palace in the clouds. Along with a fairy magician in drag? Like, seriously, what the hell is that? I don't know. Feeling hungry, he goes to the palace to ask the residents for some food, only to find out that giants live there. And the giantess, even though she's a little grumpy about this, is willing to give him some breakfast, if he does some chores. Sometime later, the ferocious giant arrives home, and Jack has to hide somewhere in the palace with help from the giantess. Soon, Jack finds that the palace is full of wonderful treasures, including gold, a hen that lays golden eggs, and a wonderful self-playing harp. And Jack's journey ends with the thrilling climax of the giant chasing him back down the beanstalk, and Jack cutting the beanstalk down with an axe and letting the giant fall to his death. Sounds pretty exciting, right? Well, it is and it isn't. Let me explain. Like I said before, this was one that I watched a lot as a kid. And watching it again as an adult, there were definitely some moments I enjoyed. I especially love the actress who played the giant's wife. I love the banter between her and the giant, and I love how annoyed she is every time Jack shows up to the house. She actually gets some good liners in there. I also love how she doesn't betray Jack like in the original story. She actually hides him and protects him from the giant, and deals with the giant's stupidity. Her name is Jean Stapleton, and she's been in a lot of TV shows lately. And I'd love to check her out in other roles she's been in. And everybody else does okay too in their roles. Like, the giant is okay, he definitely has a ferocity to him, and he definitely has an enjoyable stupor about him as well.
3, 4, shut the door.
And Dennis Christopher is okay as Jack. Although when I was younger, I used to think that was Mark Hamill playing the role as Jack. And actually, I think Mark Hamill probably would have been a great Jack. I mean, he already came off of Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. I think this probably would have been a benefit for Faerie Tale Theatre. And the mother does okay too. She's played by Katherine Hellman, and I don't really know who she is, but a lot of the commenters on YouTube said she was such a funny actress, and oh, they wasted her. Oh my goodness, they didn't do so much more with Katherine Hellman. It's like, oh, okay, maybe they should have. But I didn't really know Katherine Hellman that much, so, I mean, yeah, maybe it was a missed opportunity, but okay. What I really loved most about the episodes was how they performed the size differentiation effect. It's not as great as what movies would do or what some television shows would do, but for Faerie Tale Theatre, the effect is actually pretty convincing. And one interesting detail they added to this story, I don't know if it was in the original book, but Jack's father actually lived in the palace in the clouds, and the giant actually killed his father and took over the palace. I thought that was an interesting detail. Although it does make you wonder, did his mother live with his father when he was in the palace? Did she run away? Did she climb down the clouds? Too much thinking. It's a fairy tale. But the biggest flaw of the episode is the man who trades Jack the beans. Every time he's on screen, I just groan. I just don't understand what his purpose is. Like, I get that he's trying to be the guy who's like, oh, Jack, you're about to go on a great adventure. You're destined for great things. But when Jack gets to the top of the beanstalk and he sees the castle in the clouds, he's all dragged up and acting weird, and he looks like Mrs. Doubtfire's evil stepsister. Like, what the hell is he doing? And he's not even using a falsetto voice, like trying to disguise himself. What the hell is he trying to do here? What is his purpose? And just like some of the other episodes, some of the props are not really that good. Like the cow costume is laughable. The beanstalk doesn't really look realistic. But for what we got, I still admire the effort that they put into it. The hen that lays the golden eggs, yeah, that puppet is a step down from Jim Henson material. And a lot of the green screen keying is very off. It's kind of weird. At times it's a bit distracting, but you know, you could put up with it if you can. And I will say the climax of this episode was very awkward and clunky. Like, the giant was tripping all over the place, like, you know it was staged, and cutting down the beanstalk was very... It definitely wasn't realistic, and not that I expected it to be realistic, it's fairy tale theater, but it was definitely off. Like, it doesn't really shake that much, he falls, he disappears, and the beanstalk evaporates, kind of. So even though some parts haven't really aged with time, I still think this episode is worth watching. If not to enjoy the special effects and the giant's wife. I can watch her for days. She's so entertaining. So, be sure to plant some magic beans, climb your beanstalk, and enjoy for yourself.